What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. I hope you had a great holidays, and I hope you enjoyed Week 16 because it was an important one, and it set up a very fascinating Week 17 here, and a fascinating Week 17 power rankings. We've got a lot to sort through. A lot of movement at the bottom, but more importantly, we're going to break down the top of the power rankings, the playoff teams, the teams trying to get into the playoffs. Where do I stand on these teams heading into Week 17? So we're going to get into it. Before we do that, make sure you guys subscribe and turn on notifications because a week from Monday, which is 6 days from now, I will have my full 2021 playoff predictions show, going matchup by matchup. So make sure you stick around, subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss that video. I am definitely excited for that one. And make sure you hit the like button on this one as well. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it here. Starting at the bottom here, the Jacksonville Jaguars. No surprise, they locked up the #1 overall pick. I would love to see Gardner Minshew here this week. They have nothing to lose, really. They have that pick locked in. Let Gardner Minshew have a tryout of sorts. See if teams like the Patriots, Bears, etc. maybe want to throw some draft capital and give Minshew an opportunity to compete. I feel kind of bad for him. I feel like they're playing Glennon just so they can get Trevor Lawrence. But give Gardner Minshew a chance, Jacksonville. Do the right thing. And then as we move forward here, I just want to put a little disclaimer out there. Remember, these are Week 17 power rankings. These are how good do I think these teams are this week. And it's really difficult to sort through the motivations of these teams 31 through 23, which are all going to make up our bottom tier of really just hapless teams here in Week 17 that could lose to anybody. That said, if you want to debate the order of these next 8 teams or so, I'm honestly not going to fight you on it that much because it'd be basically a pick'em game if any of these guys played each other, in my opinion, or within a point or two. But for that reason, all of that said, the Detroit Lions are going to be the 31st ranked team here. If you watch them play the Bucs, you would understand that. Now, if you look more at the standings, you'd say, hey, this team has 6 wins. Why are they behind all of these other teams? Well, I don't even know if they're going to have their coaches this week. They don't have a head coach. They already fired him. And Matthew Stafford, there is absolutely no reason to play him this week. The reason they were higher was because of what Matthew Stafford was doing. I've said he may have been the best quarterback in the NFL in December, but without him, they are just rotten. Then the Texans, same thing. What are their motivations? We did see them actually try last week against the Colts. They have another divisional game against the Titans this week, but this week they lose to the Bengals. 2 of the last 3 weeks, they get blown out by the Bears. They lose to the Bengals. Not a good look. I do want to give a shout out to J.J. Watt. That was an incredible speech. I felt bad watching that as a football analyst, forever saying that the Texans should consider trading him because you can just see what he means to that locker room, and they're going to want him around for the rebuild. So a shout out to J.J. Watt. Then the Cincinnati Bengals +2. Hey man, they're putting up a fight. I think the most important thing here is that Zach Taylor is showing something here. I really was left with this empty feeling on his coaching efforts for the season, and it kind of was heading into the offseason before 2 weeks ago thinking, is this really the guy they want to put with Joe Burrow? But to see him come out with a good game plan, make Brandon Allen look like, I don't know, Aaron Rodgers this week, it was pretty impressive stuff. Great game plan. Great job to get this team to rally and try when they really have nothing to play for. So Zach Taylor stock up at least a little bit. Then the New York Jets, they're like actually a pretty good football team. I'll take a victory lap on this one. That weeks ago when they were still winless, I said they weren't the worst team in football. They were actually putting up a fight. They have a good defensive line. They stopped the run again this week. And, Sam Darnold, say what you want about him, but he's not the worst quarterback in the NFL. They can move the ball a little bit. So the Jets continuing to climb up, playing well for Adam Gase for whatever it's worth. They're locked in with that #2 pick, and they're going to be a fun team to discuss what their offseason is going to look like. Then the New York Giants, they are just climbing up here because the Texans and Lions, I think, are worse than them right now. I think that's fair, but it's not a compliment to the Giants. They're a terrible football team right now. I don't really have much to say. I do think they are the worst team in that NFC least at the moment. Their offense is abysmal, and their defense tries, but they just don't have enough talent to win games with their defense at this point in time with how bad their offense is. Then the Broncos at 26, staying put, have very little to add here. Drew Lock still has not really given you a ton of confidence heading into the offseason. Wasn't actually that bad this week, had a ton of drops. I'm not saying Drew Lock can't be the guy here, but I do think this team needs to think about other options to at least compete with Drew Lock in the offseason. Then the San Francisco 49ers, climbing up 4 spots here. I honestly thought they were packing it in for the year and that this defense was just kind of fold. And when that was the case with this quarterback situation, I didn't think this team was all that competitive. But to see Robert Saleh come out here and this team playing with the fire as if this was a playoff game is really fun to see. I do think the Niners are going to be, if not favorites in the NFC next year, when they get healthy, they're going to be right in the mix. They're a team with a lot of hype heading into next year for a team that had such a bad season. Then at 24, the Washington football team. This might be too high, man. This is just a terrible football team, to be honest. Now, we know they can play defense, but we also know that you can't win with defense when you have the worst offense in the NFL, and I think you can make a pretty strong case that they do. So what do you do with this team? Can they beat the Eagles to clinch the NFC East? Do they even want to do that? They just released Dwayne Haskins, for God's sake. They don't have a quarterback. If they lose, they're picking in the top 10 of the draft. If they win, they're picking like 20th. So this team is an absolute mess. I don't even have a whole lot of commentary on Dwayne Haskins because I had kind of given up with him anyway. And I actually tweeted on Sunday before he got released that I wouldn't be surprised if he's out of the league as early as next season. So I guess that really wasn't that surprising to me. I know it was for a lot of people. He doesn't have the physical talent. He doesn't have the upside that is really worth investing in. He clearly doesn't have the work ethic. He's getting in all these off-the-field drama. The teammates don't seem to like him. The coaches obviously don't like him. He's been through 2 coaching staffs. So, gosh, the NFC East, none of these teams can really grab any momentum. But Washington is ugly right now. And then New England, I mean, God, that was just embarrassing on Monday Night Football. They just were not competitive at all. Cam Newton probably not going to be back here. This team's really given up. Now, again, any Bill Belichick coached team is going to be able to compete no matter what state of the roster is, but it's just hard to know what their motivation is right now, especially after getting blown out by the Bills. On to the offseason for them. So, yeah, we got a tier gap up here, and that's because these next 6 teams I think are actually going to come out, and I can assuredly say that they are trying to win at least, and beyond that, they are just better football teams. So I see these guys as just a tier gap above other teams for a variety of reasons, I guess. So that's going to be the Eagles at 22. I think they're still trying to find out what they have in Hurst. This team, I think, wants to play for Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson wants to play for Doug Peterson. Jalen Hurts wants to play for Jalen Hurts. So they're going to come out and compete. I do think they actually beat the Washington football team on that horrific Sunday Night Football game that we're all going to have to watch. The defense can do some things. The secondary is brutal, and it's just a bad matchup against Dallas. But yeah, I think the Eagles are a competitive football team. They're better than they were with Carson Wentz, but that's not saying a whole lot. Then the Panthers, +4. And I don't know if Panthers fans were mad that I dropped them down after the bye week. I dropped them down like 5 spots after the bye week. And I thought I was just, I had them too high because they hadn't won really any games. They were 1-4 in their last 5 games, and I just kind of moved them down. And that was kind of lazy because this team has been the same team all year. And they came out and beat the Washington football team this year. They competed with the Packers last week. They come out and play. It's really that simple. They're well coached, and you have to play a good football team to beat these guys. They're solid on offense. They're young and aggressive on defense. And I like the future of this team for sure. But they need to find a quarterback this offseason, and winning this late in the season is not going to help them do that. So I don't love that necessarily. But yeah, that's where we're at with the Panthers. Then the Minnesota Vikings, a lot of people are going to want to drop them into that trash tier at the bottom, drop down 5, 6, 7 spots here. Do keep in mind their offense is still pretty damn good, and they were good in this game against the Saints. As bad as this defense is, and it is bad, they're not going to give up 6 rushing touchdowns, really 7 rushing touchdowns every week. Terrible matchup, probably the worst D-line in the NFL against the best offensive line in the NFL. So just a terrible matchup for the Vikings. I do think they come out and try to win this week under Zimmer with Kirk Cousins, and they're still a capable football team. Then the Dallas Cowboys, high risers this week. Not too often you see teams climbing up this much. And this is what I thought the offense would look much more like with Andy Dalton. Not perfect, there's that bad interception in there with Dalton, and I never said he would be better than Dak Prescott, but I do firmly believe that this is the best receiving core in the NFL, and it's a particularly easy job, relatively speaking, for quarterbacks. And when the Cowboys trust Andy Dalton, when he's not infected with COVID or coming off a concussion or being forced to start without, first team reps, he can come in and move the ball around. What did he have? Almost 400 passing yards here. These receivers are incredible. If they let the receivers make these plays and let Zeke be a complementary piece and not run the offense through Zeke, this team has a chance to come in and win playoff games, especially if the defense is playing better. So I have absolutely piqued my interest on the Cowboys because Andy Dalton is much more comfortable here, and they seem to have found some bit of a rhythm on offense. And they look like at least a light version of what we thought this team was supposed to be with Dak Prescott. Then the Atlanta Falcons, climbing up 3 spots this week. They really stuck it to the Chiefs, and in my mind, they pretty much beat the Chiefs. I mean, A.J. Terrell drops the pick, Younghoe Koo misses the field goal, and if nothing else, they were right there with the Chiefs. They played really well. The defense continues to be surprisingly good here for the Falcons. A lot of guys here just playing for their jobs. They know it's going to be a full rebuild here, so this is audition time for these guys, for the Falcons, for other teams. And we know they have talent on this roster. So Falcons, an impressive end to the season, I suppose. Then the Chargers at number 17. I'm just going to quickly dunk on all you guys in the comments who came right at me when I stuck them at 20 after they lost to the Patriots 45-0, saying I didn't watch football because I didn't have this team in the bottom 4 of the NFL and that this team just wasn't capable of winning games. Well, it's just not true. They can move the ball. Justin Herbert gets the job done on offense and some, and defensively they have the guys that can make some plays. Now, I do really hope that this back season effort, this team coming together, doesn't have them buy into Anthony Lynn and keep Anthony Lynn around. I do think that'd be a really critical mistake for an organization that has done stuff like that before. So we'll see where that goes. That would really take a lot of hype off of, frankly, next year and the overall future of this team. Not that they can't be a playoff team or whatever with Anthony Lynn, but you got your quarterback, Justin Herbert. Go and attract a Brian Dable or a Joe Brady or whoever it may be and boost the ceiling of this team, because Anthony Lynn is just never going to be a top 20 coach in the league. He just isn't. I'm sorry. Then we have a tier gap here, and this next tier are playoff teams or playoff bubble teams, basically, quote-unquote playoff caliber teams, but honestly, just teams that I am not taking seriously right now. Too many problems. Teams that, if they did get in, I would really not give them a very good chance at all to even win one game, let alone go on a run to win a Super Bowl. And that's going to start with the Arizona Cardinals. Really embarrassing performance this week against the San Francisco 49ers. And, you can put some of this on Kyler, the offensive line, the receivers. All the players need to play better for sure. But this was the first week. I haven't really taken a stance on Cliff Kingsbury, but he just doesn't look the part. These guys aren't disciplined. This is the end of year 2. And beyond that, the silly mistakes and stuff they have, the penalties, the fumbles in critical moments, it's also just this team, like I said, they're in year 2 of this scheme, and they just don't have an identity. You look at what wins playoff football in the NFL, it's knowing what you do well and really building your team, your personnel, your scheme around those things. And other than having Kyler Murray, what is it that this team does well? They don't do anything particularly well on the defensive side of the ball. They have some scattered talent. And offensively, they have no identity. And that's on the coach. So I don't necessarily think Cliff Kingsbury is a terrible coach, but similar to what we said about the Chargers, I just kind of feel where this is going. And if that's the case, Cliff is definitely on the hot seat, but I might even take the stance of they should fire him. Because Kyler's on the 3rd year of his rookie contract next season. Once they got to start paying him, things get a lot more difficult. So I would maybe speed up the process here because I just don't really feel good about Cliff Kingsbury right now. I hope he proves me wrong, but that's just kind of where I'm at right now. Then Bears at number 15. They're on a winning streak. They've played 3 of the worst defenses over the last 3 weeks. Trubisky's doing fine. I think Bears fans were actually happy to see him throw a terrible interception before halftime in this game, just to remind the front office of what this guy is capable of. I don't think it's going to matter all that much because I think this team loses to the Packers, and I think Trubisky's going to be a part of that. And even if they lose that, they could still go to the playoffs if the Rams beat the Cardinals. And then you might get 2 bad Mitch Trubisky weeks in a row, which that's really what it's all about is, where is this team headed? They could sneak into the playoffs and maybe play spoiler. I don't know, but obviously you're just not feeling good about the Bears to compete for a Super Bowl this year, let alone win a playoff game. Then we are going to have the Raiders at 14, and I want to give a shout out to Derek Carr. Comes back 2 weeks early from that groin injury, was obviously hurting him, and he wasn't perfect in this game, but he played well, and I got to respect, the toughness to see and have the awareness of, oh gosh, if I don't come out here, Mariota could come and take my job, and he came in and for all intents and purposes, won this game. He made a beautiful play to extend plays and extend the play and hit Aguilar deep at the end of this game. Something I wish he did a little more of, to be honest, is pushing the ball downfield and extending plays on third down and going for the big ones like that a little more. But anyway, a shout out to Derek Carr. But obviously this team is heading towards the offseason, and for me, John Gruden has got to admit that he is not a good general manager. I know they have Mike Mayock there, but it's pretty much confirmed that Gruden is the guy making these executive decisions. The Clelin Ferrell pick, the Jonathan Abrams pick, lots of other roster moves. Gruden is possibly the worst general manager in the NFL at this point in time, and I think Mayock could help him a lot more if they had a better relationship and a better partnership, really, as far as who makes the big decisions. So that'll be interesting to see. Do they stick with these low upside toughness picks early on? Do they make the right moves with their defensive personnel? Or are they going to do more of the same and find themselves at the exact same point next year as they've been the last 2 years, which is, a 500 football team with a really good offense and a anemic defense? Something to keep an eye on for sure. Then the Dolphins are going to find themselves in this tier. I know they won the game. I know they're probably a playoff team. I just don't take this team seriously. If you want to talk about winning a Super Bowl, they have been awesome. I've apologized multiple times about the Dolphins, but I'm not going to make this team a top 10 team because they just aren't. They're really good on defense. They are. I think Brian Flores, at this point, is probably the coach of the year, but it's not a good offense. It just isn't. And Tua, man, I'm not going to dive into the Tua thing because we're getting pretty late here, but that's looking like one of my better draft calls. I was kind of on an island saying that just wasn't a very good pick. I didn't see the upside in him, and now almost everyone I've listened to is saying the Dolphins should be considering a quarterback with that Texans pick in the top 5, at least considering it. And to me, I don't know why you play Tua week 17. I think he needs a reality check. I don't think you keep babysitting him at this point. He got benched against the worst defense in the NFL, not named the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the second he gets benched, Fitzpatrick came in and was just lighting things up. So there's obvious, red flags of sorts with Tua here. I'm not saying he's a bust. I'm not saying he can't be good, but it's just not looking very good right now for Tua and the Dolphins. And they've got to find a way to boost the upside here and figure out this offense over the offseason. Then we've got a tier gap up here. And these next teams are teams that I am taking more seriously, teams that could win a Super Bowl, teams that definitely could win playoff games, but teams that have more flaws, lack a little bit of upside, and are teams that I just have a much harder time seeing going on those 3 or 4 game runs that they're going to need to get into and win a Super Bowl. And that's going to start with one of the more controversial rankings here, and that's going to be the Steelers staying put at 12 despite beating the Colts, who are ranked above them here. And this really just comes down to the body of work over the last month of the season. Yes, the Steelers got hot at the end of this game. They made some big plays, and without risking Steelers fans coming in here too hot, they got a lot of help from penalties. And I'm not going to say they're lucky or whatever, but there was a big, explosive, crazy comeback in this game. It was great to see. You've piqued your interest on the Steelers. Their stock is definitely not down. I would say their stock is probably up, just not enough for me to boost up over the other teams. I'm still worried about this offense at the end of the day is what I'm saying here. And this defense hasn't been that elite defense that can win games. I still think it's a very flawed football team. I think they should come out and try to recapture that momentum that they showed for the last 20 minutes of this game. But in reality, they also showed the exact same offensive warts for the first 40 minutes of this game. So I think it's important not to overreact. I think it's also important for the Steelers that happened. But it just was not enough for me to all of a sudden be like, all right, yep, Steelers are good. They're going to come into the playoffs and they can move the ball again. Because for the majority of this game, that was just not the case. They were punting way too much and the offense looked the same. So they figured some things out. Big Ben's got some confidence in there. You've piqued your interest on the Steelers, but I will say I think I've got them ranked about the right spot at this point in time here at number 12. And then the Tennessee Titans. Is this team not exactly what I've been selling, what I've been fighting Titans fans on, saying that they're not some elite, top 8 team or whatever? They are what they are. They are a boom or bust team. It doesn't mean that they don't have this top 5 explosive offense necessarily, but they have a one-dimensional offense in that if teams can take away Derrick Henry and take away Derrick Brown, you are left with Ryan Tannehill on third down, which is just not ideal. It's not bad, but look at the teams ahead of them. That's just not ideal in that context. Add on top of that Mike Vrabel's defense has completely fallen apart. The pass rush is just nowhere to be found. The secondary is getting lost. The last thing I'll say here, because I do think this team can make some noise. I don't think anyone's looking forward to playing the Titans. You got to bring it like the Packers did to beat these guys. But the one thing I'll say is, with how the defense has looked, and I know it's a rough COVID season, I know Vrabel did a great job last year, are you really prepared to lose Arthur Smith here if you're the Titans? I know they wouldn't do it, but this just is bringing me back to what I said about the Falcons with Dan Quinn when they let Kyle Shanahan go. I don't think Arthur Smith is Kyle Shanahan. In fact, he's kind of a Kyle Shanahan copycat, but I just think this team is better with Arthur Smith than they are with Mike Vrabel for 2021. I think Titans fans probably agree with that, to be honest. Then the Browns, they're going to stay put at 10. I know they lost to the Jets here. And part of this is just, put a mask on, guys. Follow protocol. Don't Cleveland Brown your way to missing the playoffs, which is a reality at this point. And that is just part of the Browns and the hesitation with this team in general. But those guys will be back. I don't think they have COVID. I think they'll be back this week. And this is a team that has still had a really impressive body of work over the last month of the season. It was a slap in the face this week, and you're obviously not happy with it, but I think it kind of is what it is. I'm not going to overreact to a very rare circumstance this week where you lose your top 4 wide receivers the day before the game starts. It's just a very weird thing that I'm not comfortable overreacting to because I like what I've seen from this team over the last month. Then the Rams are going to drop down 2. They're just not an impressive offense at this point in time. I do like their defense. I think you can make a case that it is the best defense in the NFL right now. I think they'll figure out some things on offense as well. I trust Sean McVay. I don't trust Jared Goff necessarily, but they might get Whitworth back, and they have the playmakers. They have the scheme. I'm not going to overreact to the performance this week or the performance last week against the Jets. I kind of know what this team is, and that is, to me, the 9th ranked team in the NFL. And then the Colts dropping down 2 this week with the loss to the Steelers. This is much more about other teams impressing them dropping down. I think this Colts team was almost exactly who I think they are. I think they're a team that needs to win about 24-21 because their offense is not bad. It's not great. And their defense is really good, but it's not an elite defense, as I've been saying. Case in point, they lose 28-24. They can't do enough on offense. They can't bunker down on defense and finish a game. And you're just kind of left with the same Colts team that I've been projecting here. I think they can win a Super Bowl, but they might not even make the playoffs. And I just think that they have a lower upside than the rest of these teams on this list. So then we got a tier gap up, and let's talk about the exciting Baltimore Ravens for a little bit. Pretty straightforward. They've been beaten up on bad teams. They had that exciting win against the Browns. They're getting back to what they do. These running backs are getting going with Dobbins and Gus Edwards up the middle, and Lamar Jackson doing what he does well as a runner. The defense getting back to it a little bit. This team is red hot right now, and they're playing with nothing to lose. If you're the Chiefs or the Bills, not a team I want to see early on in the playoffs, which one of those, the Bills probably, 2-7 seed. I don't know exactly where it's gonna sit, but one of those 2 teams is gonna have to play the Ravens very early on, and I think that could be upset potential. Again, tune in next week to my playoff show to see where I'm thinking for that one. Then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They played possibly the worst team that's been fielded this year with the Detroit Lions without their coaches and their quarterback. So this was just target practice for Tom Brady, but good to see them do it, I suppose. Hard to know exactly how much stock you put in that, but I'm afraid of this defense. That pass rush can really get going. These guys in the secondary are versatile and athletic and confident. This defense can really play, and offensively, they're just clearly getting going. They got Godwin and Antonio Brown going. Gronk has quietly been a problem for a lot of defenses now for about 2 months. This offensive line is incredible. This roster is just insane. And if Tom Brady is on the same page, at least relative to what they were in October and November, this is a scary football team. So the Bucs are heating up at the right time for Bucs fans. Then the Seahawks are going to drop down a spot. I still like this team. I still don't think anyone's looking forward to playing them. But they just aren't doing anything exceptionally well right now. They are not having this explosive passing offense. They're fine running the football. They're fine on defense. That defense has definitely come back to earth and been a good, solid defense for the last half of the season, which I definitely expected to happen. But it's kind of come at the cost of opening up the offense and letting Russ cook. So they're basically, honestly, like the same team they were last year. If you really stack them up, it's pretty much the same team, which is a team that is right on the fringe of going to an NFC championship, and then you're one great Russell Wilson game away from going to the Super Bowl. So, that's kind of where we're at with Seattle right now. Then the Saints climbing up a spot here. Probably the best line play in the NFL heading into the playoffs on both sides of the ball. I love this pass rush, but more importantly, I love this offensive line. Just a amazing performance. Obviously, Kamara was great, and the Vikings defensive line stinks, so it's just kind of this perfect storm that led to one of the more elite running days you'll see. Drew Brees, do I feel confident in him and the way he's playing right now? Definitely not, but they'll get Michael Thomas back. It's just a very good football team. I think between the Packers, Saints, and Seahawks, it's very tightly knit, and if the Bucs are hot too, like the top four in the NFC is very tightly knit. And then the Bills at number 3, staying put here. Taking care of business against New England. Josh Allen rolling. Brian Dable, the offense rolling. Defense continues to play a little bit better every week. I would love to see a Bills-Chiefs matchup. I think they are prepared to match the firepower of the Kansas City Chiefs. That I think ultimately is what you need. I think you just need a little bit of luck on defense and the ability to match Mahomes on offense. I think the Bills are the team in the AFC that most likely can do that. And then the Green Bay Packers at number 2. This was a huge win for them for a lot of reasons. Just from a matchup point of view, there's been a lot of questions about, can this team get physical and beat teams that come out and run the ball and punch you in the mouth? This has been a almost laughably soft team in the Matt LaFleur era, and this was their first big win, and the way they did it was just so impressive and really got you thinking. Like, if they come out and play like that in January, which is a week from now, I don't know who's going to beat this team until the Super Bowl. I mean, if they have A.J. Dillon getting 6-7 yards a carry and looks like you can't tackle him in cold weather football, and that's paired with an amazing scheme that is already scary off of play action in the run game with a great offensive line in front of them, and then, Aaron Rodgers, who is the quarterback, and they have the best receiver in football right now, Davante Adams. They don't have any receivers other than Davante, but the way they run the ball, the way their offensive line works with the scheme, and the way Aaron Rodgers buys time, this team is just full cylinder right now. And that's not even talking about the defense and the contributions they're getting from some of these young players that needed to develop for this defense to become good. Guys like Rashawn Gary and Darnell Savage, who were their first-round picks last year, who I really liked. Jair Alexander locking down Corey Davis, who's low-key been one of the better receivers in football this year, at least a top 20 guy. And I mean locking down in a sense that you don't really see these days. So the Packers are making some noise. I think a lot of people kind of woke up to this team, understanding a little more about what they're all about. And at the same time, proving even guys like me who have just not taken them all that seriously, because if they play a physical team, it was always that fear of they just can't punch back. Well, they did it this week against one of the most physical teams in the league, and they already beat the Saints earlier this year, by the way, who are maybe the other most physical team in the league. So, great day in Packerland, but we are not going to see Jordan Love this week because they still got to beat the Bears to lock up the 1 seed. And then the Chiefs are going to stay a tier gap ahead, and it's closing. And I talked about how if this team is going to rest their starters for week 17, I don't really like that. I don't like teams taking 2 weeks off, especially a team like this that is not playing their best football right now, but they continue to show that, frankly, like, it doesn't really matter how well they play. Their play calling the first half, they just weren't even trying. Like, they on 4th and 1, they ran a wide receiver jet sweep pass to Patrick Mahomes, throwing 20-plus yards across the field. Like, I think, someone on Twitter put it best. Like, this was a cat playing with their food, and they knew that whatever happened, they were going to have that drive at the end of the game. I found it comical and just awesome, honestly, to look at the spread after the Falcons took the lead with 4 minutes left. The Chiefs were minus 800. And if you're not familiar with betting, basically Vegas was saying it's a lock that the Chiefs are going to win this game. It was not worth betting on the Chiefs to win, even though they were losing with 4 minutes left getting the football. Like, it was that big of a sure thing that the Chiefs were just going to win this game because that's just what they do. But it is playing with fire, and at this point, especially if the rest of their starters week 17, they're going to be playing with fire in the playoffs, and they're more likely than not going to pull these games out. But teams like the Bills, the Ravens, even guys like, the Colts, the Titans, they're going to finish stronger than the Falcons did, who were a couple big mistakes, a drop pick and a field goal away from winning this game, or at least sending it into overtime. So I'm not quite as confident in the Chiefs as I was, say, 2-3 weeks ago, but I do still think that they're the best overall football team and the most likely Super Bowl champion by a pretty significant margin. So, super long power rankings this week, so much to talk about, so much to react to, and we're just getting started. We're going to have a really fun podcast here tomorrow. So, again, make sure you guys subscribe, turn on notifications, don't miss the podcast tomorrow, and the playoff prediction show next Monday that I'm really looking forward to. Please do hit that like button, guys. Cheers. Let me know in the comments down below what you think, and we'll see you next time.